The Chargers beat the Cardinals 25-24, and like we do every single week, we're going to be going through my instant reactions to this game. So, this game just ended, and boy, was it stressful. So, of course, the Chargers end up winning this game after going for a 2-point conversion late in the game, putting them up 25-24 after being down at the start of the fourth quarter. And, there certainly is a lot to talk about this game. Entering this game, the Chargers sat at 5-5, and the Cardinals sat at 4-7. And, honestly, it was kind of hard to say that the Chargers should definitely win this because, for one, the Cardinals are definitely a competent team, and Kyler Murray was returning with having missed him for the past 2 games. It's likely that this team could have got something rolling for them. But the Chargers find a way to win it. And, let's just kind of run through the game here. So I do have the stats on the side here. Obviously, Chargers win this 25-24 after, not having a whole lot going for them early on. The first 2 possessions of the game for the Chargers offensively weren't good by any means. The first drive relatively was pretty good, but ended up being a sack on 3rd and long. I'm going to say it was like 3rd and 7. And Herbert ends up getting sacked with no time to throw it. The very next possession, I want to say it was a 3-and-out, and once again, Herbert was sacked on 3rd down. Herbert had no time to throw it, especially on 3rd down in the early first quarter. Cardinals end up getting up 10-0 relatively easy. Props to the Cardinals, genuinely. To Cardinals fans, obviously, I'm a Chargers fan, but this was a really good game, and the Cardinals played really good, and for quite a few of these quarters, the Cardinals definitely deserved the win. Now, at the end there, the Chargers found a way to win, and I think they do deserve this win, but it was definitely questionable. Early, the Chargers defense had nothing good to say about them. Yes, they had the forced fumble by Derwin James, recovered by Sebastian Joseph-Day, but in reality, even the play that the fumble occurred on, the Cardinals were consistently getting huge chunks of yards. I believe the first possession, the Cardinals had like 4 plays over 5 yards or over 6 yards. It felt like every single rush by James Conner or even Kyler Murray when he'd escape the pocket was a huge gain of yards, like 6+ yards. And, the Chargers really had nothing going too well for them. Even after that fumble, Chargers weren't able to do anything offensively with that. And then you get back to the defense. Once the defense back on it after the Chargers failed to score there, once again, we're seeing huge chunk plays after huge chunk plays constantly. And DeAndre Hopkins had the, big touchdown play. I think that might have been the first one of the day. That was just, he catches it and breaks a tackle there, and then he's just in wide open space. There's no one even around him, and he just pretty much walks in for the touchdown. And defensively, the defense couldn't do like anything. I felt like they weren't filling holes in the run game, which was allowing huge chunks of yards. And then on the other side of things, when they were able to fill the holes, or when it was in the pass defense, they couldn't make any tackles. There was only 1 sack in this game, and the amount of times, I think there was at least 3 other times where there was a clear, this should be a sack. In any other situation, this is a sack, and somehow Kyler Murray escapes the pocket. Now, of course, props to Kyler Murray for finding a way to escape the pocket, but it's sure frustrating when I'm looking at this, and Kyler Murray is in the middle of a circle, completely surrounded by 4 Chargers defenders, and somehow escapes and gains yards. There was one play where it looked like Kyler Murray was going to get tackled 6 yards behind the line of scrimmage, and he somehow pitches it back to James Conner. James Conner runs and gains 6 yards, almost gets the first down. How does that happen? No one was able to get like any tackles anywhere on the field, whether that be getting the sack in the run game or deep in the pass game. Now, admittedly, the defense did pretty solid. They hold the Cardinals to 24, which is better than what they've averaged. The Chargers defense has allowed per game on average. And they come up with the interception and the forced fumble and the fumble recovery, all in relevance to Derwin James. Forced fumble and the interception was due to Derwin James. Michael Davis, actually at the end of the game, almost comes up with an interception. Doesn't. Michael Davis is actually the only one to get a sack in this game on a really good blitz package call where he comes off the edge completely untouched and finally sacks Kyler Murray late in the game. But Offensively, the Cardinals did really, really good. They had 24 points, obviously. I think they punted one time this game, and it was with 9 minutes left in the fourth quarter. It took 3.5 quarters before the Cardinals even had to punt the ball. I think the first time they had a negative play was either right at the end of the first quarter or in the second quarter, already their fourth drive before they finally had a negative play. Now, by the end of the game, there was a decent amount. I think the Chargers forced 12 negative plays, which is really good, especially for how bad it was early on. But the Cardinals really had it going offensively. Total yards, Cardinals beat the Chargers 364 to 311, with a lot of those coming in the rushing game. 179 rushing yards for the Cardinals. Now, I'm not sure exactly where the Cardinals rank based on rushing per game, where they sit in the team standings and all of that, but I do remember them being below average, I think even in the 20s, and although the Chargers' run defense has been really, really bad, the Cardinals did really good, and James Conner looked really, really good. He had 118 yards on 25 attempts. Now, no touchdowns on that, but he had 4.7 yards per attempt. It felt like the Cardinals really entered this game with, a set game plan, which is something I feel like the Chargers don't really seem to work well with. It feels like when the Chargers enter a game, no matter what the weakness is for the other team's defense, the Chargers don't target it. The Cardinals did a really good job at targeting. They knew that the Chargers' run game was bad, and they targeted it. We have 118 from James Conner. You have 56 from Kyler Murray, and then you also have 5 yards from Ingram, number 30, from the Cardinals. That's a lot of yards rushing, more than they had passing, with only 191. No, slightly less rushing yards than passing yards there for the Cardinals. But, they did a really, really good job entering this game, really going after the Chargers' run defense. And like I said, the Chargers just couldn't seem to get any tackles. Now, the good thing for the Chargers, I know, props to the Cardinals, they played a really, really good game. Chargers do come out on top. Now they move to 6-5. Really happy about that, especially with how stressful this game was. Let's talk about some of the good and some of the bad. And, let's start with the former. Let's start with the bad, and then we can end on a high note, such as the Chargers did in this game. Bad. No tackling. Defense struggled heavily through most of the game, and especially in that first half. You allow 17 points in the first half, 10 of which were in the first quarter, but you only allow one touchdown in the second half of the game. Chargers have done a pretty good job at, limiting scoring in the second half. No matter how great you do in the first quarter, in the first half, limiting points in the second half, and they find a way to, get something rolling for them. Offensively, another bad thing there. Chargers couldn't score in the second half. I think this is the first time. They repeated a bunch of times. Chargers have scored one touchdown in the second half through 20 possessions, and this would be the second. So your 10% touchdown percentage in the second half through the last 20 possessions you've had. That's not good by any means, especially with Justin Herbert there in the fold. Now, speaking of Justin Herbert, he had a really, really good game. There was an interception that would be overturned, and rightfully so. I would agree with that. But Herbert ends the game with 3 touchdowns. He gets Keenan Allen back in the fold. I think that was Keenan Allen's first touchdown of the year. Now, of course, that being said, he missed a ton of games. He's played 2 full games now, maybe 3 after this game. And, getting Keenan Allen that first touchdown is a really good sign. Keenan Allen, by far, one of my favorite players on this roster. But you also get DeAndre Carter there. You get Gerald Everett with the 2-point conversion, which, by the way, looked like one of the easiest 2-point conversions I've ever seen. And the Austin Eckler touchdown to put you in the position to get that 2-point conversion there. So, Justin Herbert, 35 for 47. Not sure what the exact percentage on that is, but that sounds like somewhere in the range of 73 or so percent. Not sure on that 100%. 274 yards and 3 touchdowns, and I believe he moved into second all-time, only behind Dan Marino for most touchdowns through the first 3 years, passing Andrew Luck. I think that was today's game that occurred in, with those 3 touchdowns and 0 interceptions. Crazy stat I didn't realize happened. If that interception would have standed, which it shouldn't have, I will say that, Herbert had 5 interceptions in 5 games in a row. That is an interception a game for 5 in a row. That's crazy. That's something I never thought I'd hear with Justin Herbert at the quarterback, but it happened. Now, thankfully, it didn't move to 6 for 6. Thankfully. But Herbert did honestly have a really, really good game. He had 3 touchdowns. He also had a couple pretty big runs. I think 2 huge runs and a couple others there. Herbert right here, 4 carries for 38 yards. And I think most of those yards came from 2 separate occasions. I think Herbert had like a 25-yard run or something like that when all the routes were over here. Keenan Allen drug his man deep, and Herbert just kept running. That was a really, really good play. But you have Carter, 73 yards on 7 receptions and a touchdown. Obviously, Austin Eckler had his touchdown and 60 yards. Joshua Palmer, 5 for 56. He did have that fumble. Thankfully, Michael Bandy was able to fall on top of that because that could have been a huge momentum swing, and the Chargers would go out and score on that same possession. So it's a really good thing that they did overturn that, because when I first witnessed it, I'm like, oh, Michael Bandy clearly got that. And they said that was Cardinals ball, and I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. Thankfully, they did overturn it. It looked like 2 players had possession of the ball at the same time. Due to a rule set, offensive player always wins on a 50-50 ball. That's just how it works in the rule book. So thankfully, Michael Bandy was able to get on that. Chargers go down and score on that. Keenan Allen also had 5 for 49 and a touchdown, especially last week. He had 96. So Keenan getting back into fold is doing a really good job so far this year. Gerald Everett, didn't see a whole bunch of him, 4 for 18. Now, we did, of course, have that 2-point conversion completion, but it seemed like he wasn't in the game plan at all. Now, I know he was injured this last week. Maybe he wasn't 100%, but good to see him get back in the fold. Defensively, not too much to talk about here. Honestly, a little bit of surprise. Alohi Gilman, who came in for Nas Adderley with that thumb injury, had the most tackles on the game with 7 tackles. Derwin James right there in second with 6 tackles. His interception, his forced fumble. The rest of the way down, not too much defensively to talk about. Not a whole lot there. Dicker, the kicker, only had 1 field goal to kick, and he 100% on that 26-yarder, put that through pretty easy. And I think he had 2 extra point attempts. Obviously, Chargers don't go for it at the end of the game, extra point wise. J.K. Scott had a pretty solid game. He always has a really good game. Yards wise, maybe not so much, but he does do well, at least, not allowing big returns. I think this was the biggest return occurred this game with like 19 yards, something like that, but that's not common at all. For the Cardinals, 118 yards for James Conner. DeAndre Hopkins had 87 and that touchdown. But after that, it really fell off. The next guy is Hollywood Brown with 46 yards. The cornerbacks did a really good job, honestly. Michael Davis had a pretty big game with that, breaking up the ball at the end of the game. He had the only sack of the game, and he did pretty good overall. Honestly, there wasn't many possessions or many plays his way that were big plays. He did a really good job. Asante Samuel Jr., I didn't hear his name a whole lot. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Normally, it's a good thing for a defense player, but I just honestly didn't hear his name a whole lot. And JT Woods was in this game. I saw him a couple times, but I don't know if he was really around. He did have a key missed tackle at one point, actually 2 of them. But I didn't see him as much as I thought I would. Maybe that was just me not seeing him, camera views, all that stuff. But I didn't see JT Woods too much. But, let's talk about the end of the game here. Talked a lot of stats there, but let's talk about the end of the game. You have the Chargers, who have the ball, and it's 3rd and 12. You gain 6 yards on that. Now it's 4th and 6, and you decide to punt it. A little bit weird, especially with Herbert doing really good and your defense struggling. So you punt that, whatever. Cardinals, I don't think they score on that drive, did a really good job. On another occasion, it looks like Chargers are guaranteed to go for it with like 3 minutes or 4 minutes left in the game. They're guaranteed to go for it on 4th down, most likely. And a complete failure by the offensive line on 3rd down. Once again, I think it was like 3rd and 7. Failed to block on a 0 blitz and a huge loss of yards. A terrible loss of yards. You end up having to punt it again there. Defense steps up big time. You get a tackle for loss on the first one. You get that sack on the second play. And then on the third play, James Conner gets a pretty good chunk of yards, but couldn't get the first down. Cardinals forced to punt it. And that's when the Chargers get the ball with like 2 minutes or something left in the game. I want to say it was right at the 2-minute marker. And Herbert finds his way down the field. And in my honesty, kind of, proves all these people that have been saying social media quarterback and all that stuff wrong. He drives down the field, primarily passing. I don't know if there was a single run play on that, or planned run play, I should say. Drives down the field, makes it look relatively easy. You score a touchdown on the Austin Eckler kind of out route here, if you want to call it out route. And pretty simple. Austin Eckler does a really good job of turning his body and getting that ball in. And you go for 2 there, and Gilbert Everett gets in there pretty easy once again. And Herbert made it look relatively easy. Herbert did a really good job. Offensively, did a really good job in that last drive in putting themselves in a position to win the game and doing that and winning the game. Coaching-wise, not too bad. I'm very happy to see Staley go for that on 2-point conversion. I knew it was going to happen. I was worried about it. But I'm happy that it worked out because that is what Staley showed that he was in year 1. It seemed like he was really scared to do that this year, but they go for it. It works out. 2-point conversion goes, and they win because of that 2-point conversion. I'm really happy to see that. Offensively, Joe Lombardi still needs to get fired. It was terrible. I mean, in that second half, you score 1 touchdown, and there's many times where it was like, what is this play? Why are you running this play? Like, 2nd and long, 3rd and long, screenplay out of nowhere. You have a short pass on like 3rd and 14, 3rd and 12, and you gain like 4 yards in a short pass. Why? You're forcing yourself to punt it there. Some really bad play calling still offensively. Thankfully, you win this game, but you only scored 25 points with an offense that's relatively healthy. Now, speaking of health, you do lose Corey Linsley. Trey Pipkins comes out, but he does go back. And Corey Linsley, no updates on him. He was in concussion protocol. But I don't think there's any defensive injuries. Thankfully, that's something we haven't seen in a long time. I think Joe Lombardi still needs to go. But, overall, Chargers team win this game. And it wasn't pretty, but they still found a way to win this game. 25-24. They moved to 6-5. I think that puts them in a spot where they may retake the playoff spot that they had previously. If not, next week you're going to see the Raiders. You could quite potentially take that spot back right there. But this was a must-win game. I've said this time and time again. This game, I think if the Chargers would have lost this game, it would have pretty much erased their chances of making the playoffs. Not only because I think Chargers can only lose 2 more games the rest of the year, but also confidence-wise. Thankfully, they win this game. Now you got to prepare for the next week. Celebrate this win, obviously, but you got to prepare for the next week. Really, really happy with this win. But what do you guys think? Comment down below. Have a conversation with me. You guys are as much a part of this channel as I am. I love having conversation with you guys. We're all a Chargers community together. Please have a conversation with me. I'm really, really happy about this game and thankful that the Chargers won this game. If you enjoyed the content, please like and subscribe. And as always, I hope it taught something today. I hope it made you smile, made you laugh. Hopefully, this game also made you do the same. And as always, you guys all be safe out there.